All right, I think we'll make a start. So thank you very much for joining us for the closing event of Breaking Barriers Refugee Week. So this event is about service learning. Is service learning the future of higher education to foster citizens of change? So my name is Pascal Roussel. I work for the University of Leicester Sanctuary Seekers Unit, and I'm one of the organizers of Breaking Barriers Refugee Week, which happens every year at the start of March. So in the background, I've got two of my colleagues supporting this event. I've got Alex Palanak, the head of Sanctuary at the University of Leicester, who will be keeping an eye on any comments and questions in the chat. And I've got Julie Umarova, who is our Sanctuary Program Administrator, who is letting people in and looking about over any technical issues. But before I introduce our speakers, I will go through a few housekeeping rules. So you will not be able to unmute yourselves during this event. This is because we are recording the event and it will be uploaded onto YouTube. So we don't want anyone appearing in the video and then not wanting to be in the recording. So you can use the chat box if you have any questions or comments, or if you have any issues or concerns, you can also send a private message to Julie Umarova directly using the chat box. So everybody has been super kind and respectful all week, so I am not worried about this. But yes, so again, we are recording and we will upload this video probably a week or two after the end of Breaking Barriers. If you have any queries following this session, feel free to email us to sanctuary@le.ac.uk. And now I will introduce our lovely speakers. So today we're joined by Katia, who is joining us from Belgium, and Pierre, who is joining us from France. I'm really excited about this event. I met Katia at a staff training in Italy in June, where I find out about service learning. And so I'm really happy we get to introduce this concept today. And here, passing over to Katia.
Thank you, Pascal. Good morning, everyone. So I'm Katia. I am working at the KU Leuven in Belgium, where we have already a service learning team in place, where we are implementing the pedagogy already. And I'm happy to share our experience so far and take you on this journey with me. Thank you, Pascal, for the next slide. Yes. So one of the questions that we can start asking is, okay, service learning, we will dive into the pedagogy, but why? Why would we explore the concept of service learning? And I will dive into the report that came out in 2021, a report that was written by UNESCO, Reimagining Our Futures Together. And the opening line in the report is, our humanity and planet Earth are under threat. Now it seems more like the start of a sci-fi or an end of the world doom and gloom story. So it's not very encouraging to start like that, but they don't leave us hanging very long. What they want to say is like, there is a complexity, there are a lot of problems that we are confronted with in our society today. And so when we look at education, we can ask ourselves, what kind of role can education play in the current situation? And so the whole idea is that we need a new social contract for education. This new social contract that would lead education to not just be outside of the world like a separate entity, but really to be in the world, engaged with the world. And the function of education could be to look into the injustices that we discover in our world, to repair them, and then to look into the future and see how can we transform the future. Of course, this social contract, that doesn't happen overnight. We need also some preconditions. What do we need then in that social contract? How does it look like? And so very important here is to see that it should be grounded in human rights. That's the big human rights precondition of the social contract. It should be based on principles of non-discrimination, social justice, respect for life, human dignity, and cultural diversity. It should also be encompassing an ethic of care, reciprocity, solidarity, and it should be strengthening education as a public endeavor and the common good. Now, these are not the easiest principles to build on, but these are the grounding principles of this new social contract. Now, if we want to realize this social contract, we also need pedagogies that will help us in this process. And so we need pedagogies that foster cooperation and solidarity. The goal is that we would start learning in and with the world, and that we should, improve it, that there are possibilities for us to improve it. So what kind of learning are we looking into then? Well, it's an interdisciplinary, problem-oriented, collaborative learning that we can use in this pedagogy. Next slide, please. So if we look at the problems that we are confronted with today, we can look into solutions, and any given problem can, invite many people to work on, and whoever is working on a solution will come up with a different, on the problem will come up with different solutions. So the question is, but what is the starting point of these of our working into possible solutions? And so we see there that it would be very interesting to look into pedagogical approaches that are not looking into any given solution, but that works towards or works on certain values and principles, that is understanding that as humanity, we are very much interdependent on one another, and that solidarity can be a part of us looking into the complexities of today. And so then the next step would be, or that is highlighted in the report, is that service learning and community engagement really sets the stage for students to connect with the broader systems in which these solution or problems that we are looking at are taking place. It invites us also to look into all the different processes that go behind or that are running in these broader systems. It also invites the students to look into experiences that are going beyond their own experiences. And with that, when you are engaged in society, it's very important to approach a community or to start with a service in a spirit of humility, free of paternalism, not just going to a community and say like, I'm here to fix your problem, but to really engage with the society, especially if we are, connecting with those that are, in more vulnerable situations than we are. And so the conclusion of the section of the report that deals with these pedagogical approaches says that service learning in itself has the potential to enlist solidarity as a central principle to problem-solving pedagogies. Because we're not just looking for a solution for our own gain or, to promote our own career or, to promote our own self-interest, but we're looking at a problem and taking the interest of others into consideration. We are working from a spirit of solidarity. And so that leads us to the question, okay, then what is this service learning that we are now talking about? So yes. What is service learning? I'm not sure for the audience whether this is a new concept, or maybe you have heard something about it already, or maybe just by looking at the concept service learning, you already have some ideas. So maybe we can take just a few moments for yourself to think, if I think of service learning, what does it mean to me, or what do I think about? Just a few minutes, you can write it down or just think out loud.
Or if you want to share some thoughts in the chat box,
in the
go
chat,
ahead.
Yeah, please go ahead. I think we can, I'm sure you came up with some ideas, but I think we can dive into Just one thing to say before we start, service learning, it's really difficult to put it in one simple, clear-cut definition. So that's why we will look in some principles of service learning. We will look into some kind of elements that we need to say, like, this is service learning and this is not service learning. And we will walk through some of these definitions of our approaches. And the first one, the most easiest one to look at service learning, is to just describe it as in it's 3 verbs. When students are undertaking or are engaged in a service learning course, they will do 3 things. It's serving, reflecting, and learning. It looks very straightforward. So we can say that service learning, it's a form of experiential education. They will not be just in class reading their textbooks or doing exercises. What we will do is we will let them experience the world as it is. So we will invite them outside of the classroom, outside of the campus walls, and we will invite them in society as it is. We will set up a setting in which they can take on a social engagement in which they will serve a certain community. It's a well-defined, specified community. It can be any type of community. It can be local, it can be global, it can be a partnership with a partner organization that is also working with a community. You can work directly with a community. It can vary depending on what your course will be about. And then the goal is that in their serving, their social engagement, that will be their experience. Now, an experience in itself can be very interesting, but we want students to really learn from that experience. And so what we need is the reflection. Inviting students to reflect on their experience, to design a well thought through reflection exercise and process for the students to learn. That is the follow-up. That is actually the reflection. I always say that's where the magic happens. That's where you make it meaningful, any experience that they had in their serving. And then they go through a process of learning. This learning can be in various ways. It can be on a very academic level where you, for example, you confront the theories or the concepts that you have discussed in class, and you will look into the reality and confront those two. That's like more of an academic way of learning. But you can also say, like, what does it do to you as a person to be in a certain experience? You can say, as a professional now, what do you see as a professional? What does it mean to you when later on you will be in the workplace? So there are different ways in which you can learn, and that can be all steered through the reflection process. And you can see that this is not just the one cycle, but that the cycle actually continues. The purpose is that once a student has gained some insights or perspectives, or gets a better grip on certain concepts, that they will take that into further experiences, and so that the learning cycle will continue as they go. Next slide, please. Sometimes also when we think of defining something, it helps to look at what it is not. And so this is what we will do through this Venn diagram that we have here. You see that there is a part of academic study, there is a part practical experience, and there is a part of social engagement. We can look at each time at the intersection of 2 of these elements, and these are things that we already know. For example, if you have a medical student who is learning in their program a lot of competencies and knowledge that they need to know, at some point we will send them into a hospital so that they can really apply what it is that they're learning. They will probably first practice on a dummy, but then, you know, they need to make the switch to real life people. So that's the internship as we know it. Another part could be that this medical student is learning about, for example, let's say if the patient is from a different cultural background, a different religious background, then how as a medical student will I go about, you know, the medical treatment, my interaction with the students. So there is a certain social engagement that is now part of what the student is learning. Often this finds place in civic education. And what often happens is that the student will learn about certain people groups maybe, and then learn how to work with these people and with these patients. Another part could be that this medical student is volunteering. For example, they work with Doctors Without Borders. They go on the streets as an ambassador to inform people of what Doctors Without Borders are doing. They raise awareness. They want to collect money to support the cause. This is a volunteering activity. Of course, the student will learn a lot of skills while being a volunteer in this process, but this is actually not embedded in the curriculum. It is not a course. It's something that the student is doing outside of their professional training. And so when we look at service learning, we see that all these components are actually come together. It's a three-way intersection. Because, for example, this medical student can, for example, work with an organization that is visiting homeless people. They are visiting the streets, they are meeting people, they are encountering the people in their own context. And it might be that the student will meet, for example, a refugee or an asylum seeker or someone on the street. And the first thing that they will do is meet the people, have an interaction with the people, and meet the person as he or she is in that moment. Offering medical assistance might be what the need is of the person that they are meeting, and in that sense, the student will be able to apply the knowledge and the competences that they are learning in their program. But it might also be that the need is somewhere else, and the first need might be just having a conversation, offering a cup of coffee. You see, so in this sense, we are meeting the person not in the medical setting, but in the setting that the person finds itself in. And that already gives a different dimension to what service learning is. So this just to give a certain dynamic or idea what it is an academic study, it is embedded in the curriculum, it is a practical experience for the students related to their field of study, but there is also this social engagement. And these three elements make up what service learning is. Thank you. The next thing to look at service learning is to look at, okay, we have now three verbs. We kind of feel of what it is and what it is not. There is an extra dimension to it. But service learning also has three essentials, which is also core to what service learning is. The first one is that when you're engaging in service learning, you're focusing on a need that is in the community. You're not going from your academic study into a community, observing and saying like, oh, I see what the problem is now, I will fix it and I will offer some assistance here. The purpose is that the students and the teachers, they will go meet a community, be with the community, and together with the community, they will figure out, where are you at? Who are you? What is challenging to you? What is a necessity to you? To then examine with themselves, what is the knowledge that we have at hand? What are the competences that we have, and how together we can, look how we can work with the community to address the need expressed by the community together. So this is a crucial point, the first point. Second is that, it is a university program. The purpose is for the student to learn and also to master his or her own study process, learning process. So the student needs to be actively involved in the entire process. It is not just an assignment that you give as a professor to your student and they have to do it well and then it's finished. The student itself will really be active from the beginning to the end. They will go to the streets and meet the people. They will look into working with a partner. They will see whether their partnership is going well. They will see what knowledge is it that I have that I can really offer the person. So it's the learning process of the student and it's his or her involvement that is very important. And third, what we want to see in service learning courses is that the service and the learning, they are very well integrated. They are not separate from one another. It is not enough to have a course, for example, on migration, and you look into different theories and concepts in class, and then you send them in an organization and to work with migrants, and they're separate from one another. You need to intentionally link the learning content with the service that the students are doing. And so this link, how can we link it? That often finds place in the reflection activities, where you merge the two activities together. So next slide, please. So reflection is core. As we have seen with the 3 verbs, the reflection really makes that the student will be learning. We see also that the reflection makes that the service and the learning are well integrated. So this reflection part is really crucial. And so that's why we say often, like, you have the service and the learning, but then the hyphen in between the 2 words, that is really where the integration takes place. And so that is the reflection. There is a lot to say about reflection. It is it's often very challenging as a professor, as a teacher, to design the reflection in a meaningful way for the students. It's very uncomfortable because, you know, it's a process. It's often very difficult for a teacher to control the process. For the student also, it's often very uncomfortable in the sense that it is not just me learning something cognitively, but I need to really learn as a whole person. That means like my feelings, my emotions, that's also a part of my learning process. And that is something that within a university context, we are often very not used to learning, you know, as a person, instead of just the brain part of our learning process. The difficulty often is also, how do you evaluate all of this? I will not go into detail now, but just to say that there's a lot of literature on it, and it's a growing process for the student and the teacher, you know, this whole reflection process. But as I said, this is where the magic happens, so don't be afraid of it. It's also very interesting, you know, to go through this process. Yes, next slide, please. A next concept to go into is a solidarity. We have seen already in the UNESCO report that this solidarity part, that is really crucial to service learning. It gives meaning to the service learning, that it's not just giving a solution to any given problem, but it is opening up a different dimension to it. Now, what is it then? What is solidarity? And what is the kind of solidarity that we envision here? And this is very much for us. We are working together in a program with Latin America, where for them, service learning, it's actually called solidarity service learning. So they're also highlighting already the importance of the solidarity in the service learning. So it's not just any service. So I want to explore this solidarity concept from their experience and see what we can do with it as well. So next slide, please. Thank you. So the first way to look at solidarity to them is also like not look at it in a vertical way, but in a horizontal way. Now, what does that mean? It means that very often when you come from a university, you are coming from a community of people who are very skilled, have a lot of knowledge. Often you have many resources. You're resourceful, and you often come from a position of power, a privileged position. And what happens often when we go outside to communities who are less privileged, it's very easy to fall into a trap of, I will come to help you. And so what we want with service learning is really that the academic community becomes very aware of who they are and what their assets are, and then go into a community to meet them where they are at and get to know the community and see what the assets are that the community also has, so that it becomes this dialogue between both communities, where, for example, when you come from an academic community, you have a lot of knowledge on, let's say, poverty. But then when you go and meet people who are living in poverty, they don't have your academic, theoretical, very rich knowledge, but they also have knowledge. It's experienced knowledge. They are living the life of someone in poverty. And so how, as an academic, with your students, do you meet communities, and how will you dialogue with them so that you will advance your own knowledge with the knowledge that they have, and so you will co-construct in a process of dialogue. That means that you will, seek out the other community and seek out what it is that they have that you don't have, to explore the knowledge that they have that you do not have, and see what is it that they have to give to me, and where in this process will I be on the receiving end in what we are doing together. That means that unlike in a solidarity, like more in a vertical way, where you will be the active partaker, you will play an active role, and the one that you will serve is more on the passive side. That's not what we want. We want that the other person, the other community, is as actively engaged in the process as you are, coming from an academic field. That means also that in both communities, there is no object. There is no object to study. There is no object that you will help. There is only subjects. And so in that process, it's very important that you will understand that your students are not just these students. They are a student, a person with, a personality, with emotions, with capacities, and they are entering in this experience. And on the other hand, in the community, there is no such thing as the poor, or the refugee, or the migrant, or the elder. There is a person that is belonging to a community, but that person also has agency. And so how in this process of dialogue can you call forth this agency of all the people that are involved, so that they become agency of change, the student as well as the person that you are working with from a certain community that you are engaging. So these are the underlying principles that we really want to call forth into when we practice service learning. Next slide, please, Pascal. Another way to look into solidarity, or what we can call intelligent solidarity, is look at that there might be three ways of three dimensions to look into solidarity. For example, with a parable or the story of the fisher, you can say, well, if I go outside and I meet someone who is hungry, what I will do is I will probably give them a fish to eat, because, the need of the other person is very here and now. It is very direct, and I can offer direct assistance or direct help to the problem that is at hand. That is one dimension that I can do, and that you can, that can be the activities in your service learning program. Often though, if I give a person fish today, probably tomorrow they will be hungry again. And so I will have to give them a fish again. So what you can see in this process, if you're only looking at the direct needs, is that, the other person continues to be dependent on you. And we just saw with the horizontal solidarity that we want the other person to be as actively engaged as you are in this process. So what you can do, for example, is, and that is represented by the fishing rod, is that you examine yourself and say, what is the knowledge that I have that is valuable to the other person that I can maybe transfer to the other person? That might mean, for example, I know how to fish. I know how to make a fishing rod. I know when is the best time to fish, and I know how to prepare a fish. And I will now explore all of that with the community, so that in the process they become empowered, so that tomorrow they don't need me anymore, but they have the knowledge for them to sustain themselves, to evolve, to that's the wrong word, to just, grow in their own community and just, find their own strength and continue their own lives without being dependent on me. So that would be the second dimension of the process. Thirdly, imagine that, there is upstream, there is this company that is just dumping poisonous water into the river. I can teach the community how to fish, but the fish will be poisonous and they will not be helped at all. And so the water here could represent the social structures that are built around a person. And so if I'm trying to help a person, or I give the person empowerment by teaching them things, but the social structures in which the person finds itself are still unjust, there is the system will constantly reproduce one another and be reproduced in the process. And so the question would be here, if with my students I find myself in a certain situation, how can I guide them in figuring out what are, you can maybe say, the cracks in the system, examining the system that make the people vulnerable that I'm working with in my service learning course. And so when I identify these cracks in the system, or the flaws, the errors in the system, the injustices, can I maybe, from the discipline that we are working with, or from the course that we are working from, see what could be changed into the system? What could we do to address these injustices in the system? And from there, as the UNESCO report says, reimagine the future, reinvent the future, transform the future. And these are all things that you can take into your service learning course. Next slide, please. As I said already, it's great to be very actively involved outside and have the focus to the communities outside of the university walls. But at the end of the day, you are a teaching institution, and the purpose is for the students to really learn. And so we are seeking for a high impact educational practice. There are a lot of researches being done already on the impact of service learning on the students. This, for example, is a study from the United States, where they were looking into different formats of educational practices and looking into how impactful it is for the learning process of the student. And here you can see that it is one among the 10 most impactful educational practices, because they go outside in the community, into the real life. They will be, applying what they know in the real life, and you will take them into the classroom to reflect on what it is that they have been doing. It is a great setting for students to understand that their study is not just for themselves, for their own career, but how they can be engaged with the world. So it's a good preparation for citizenship, to see me as a professional later on. What position will I take? How will I be a professional once I am graduated? How will I live my life? What are the values that I will live from if I act in life? So this just to show that, and there are a lot more research being done on that, but just to show that also the learning process is very enriching for the students. Next slide, please. This is just an example. This summer, I was in Buenos Aires for a conference on service learning, and we visited Vicha, which is in Brazil, it would be the favelas. So really the outskirts where people are living together in not the best circumstances. And this, for example, is a law student, and on the right, there's his professor. And they went to the Vichas to meet the refugees there, the migrants there. They were coming from Peru and Bolivia and from all over, seeking a better life, ending up in the Vichas. And so the assignment for the students was to offer legal advice, to make them aware of their rights, to empower them in the process. And so this student was giving a testimony on his service learning experience. And he did that by exploring the two words entender and comprender. I'm not sure if someone in the audience is probably speaking a lot more Spanish or understanding it better than me, but he was explaining that with these two words, entender for him was like, I can be in class, I can go through my courses, I can read my books, I can study, and I can really understand what it is that I'm studying and, you know, be a good student and be a good professional later on. But he said it was not until I was, you know, visiting the vishas and really interacting with the people for whom these laws were written and designed, and being with them in this process and understanding who they were and what the law was doing to them or for them, that I really started comprehending with my person, with my whole being, what it was about. And so to him, it was this pure cognitive understanding, but more from a distance and more, you know, as an observer point of view, compared to being part of the process and really being a subject in the whole and comprehending with his whole being what it was about. So to me, that was a very strong testimony to see if, yeah, what does it do actually, service learning, and why do we send them outside to have these experiences? Next slide, please. Thank you. So this is some principles, some definitions, some perspectives on service learning. But now you may wonder, okay, but now what to do with this? How to move forward from what you might think is an interesting approach and what you want to do with it in your own institution. At KU Leuven, what we have been doing so far are, you know, working around these two approaches that go hand in hand. We are doing it internally, but we, you know, through a program, we are also supporting other higher education institutions, and we are facilitating the process of institutionalizing service learning, and we are using these same principles so they can be very helpful for you as well, just as a kickstart. First of all, there are two processes that are very important. That's the bottom up and the top down. These, and I will explain them in a minute, but so these are two processes that we are looking into. And on the other hand, there are domains of actions that will highlight what kind of actions can we undertake in this institutionalization process. Next slide, please. Okay, so first up, there is the two processes, the bottom up and the top down. What we did at KU Leuven, and we're also doing in the other universities that we are supporting, that is first identifying what is already there in your university. It might be that there are already very interesting volunteering programs or participatory research programs in your university. It might be that there are already courses, you know, where students and teachers are having some kind of engagement with communities locally or, you know, far away in the south or somewhere else in other parts of the world. And you can see what is it then that they're doing, and do we see the potential in these courses or in these programs to become service learning? You will see that some programs are what they are and they are valuable in what they are, but you will see in other programs that they are really leaning into service learning already, and so, you know, you can continue your process with them. So it's first looking into existing practices, and then maybe launching a call for projects, pilot projects that you can continue the process with. What you need then is the bottom-up approach and say, okay, as a educational management, we will give the necessary resources. That means time for people to, you know, to facilitate the process. That means, you know, extra financial resources, of course, extra time to organize and set up all the processes needed for the institutionalization process. For us at KU Leuven, we now have a service learning office. We include with them the educational policy. So we have people that are working on the central level, designing or professionalizing all the teaching staff. They are supporting us, but we have also people from the student affairs, because they are very close with the students and they know what students need. And so they advise us as well. And so together we form a team and we try to facilitate the process. And of course, the quality control is very important. You just don't want to have service learning courses popping up everywhere without really monitoring and evaluating what is going on. So these are the two processes, bottom up, top down. They find each other in pilot projects. And that is where you can start from. And for us at KU Leuven and also at Université Catholique de Lille, Pierre will share more of that. They also start with just pilot projects. That's where you can start. The next slide, please, Pascal. Thank you. And so the domains of action is, what are the activities that you will be organizing or you can organize in your university to sustain these processes or to facilitate your activities? First of all, there is a lot of information to give to many people. You can look into professors, teachers, you will inform students, because to them also often it is very new. You can, if you, for example, you are a privately funded university, you can inform maybe people that want to fund a course. You can inform, for example, the city council if you want to have a project with them. So there are a lot of people to inform on what it is exactly this service learning that you want to organize. Second of all, there is the networking. When you identify courses and the teachers that are engaged in service learning, it's always interesting to connect them, because everyone has experiences. It's good to share the good practices, to see what are the challenges, how can you overcome them together, how can you learn from one another. Sometimes it might be interesting to invite your community partners, because they can share some interesting insights as well from the ground. So you can create a network within your university, and I will talk more on it in just a minute. There are also a lot of networks outside that you can be engaged in, just to, learn more on service learning. The third activities, as I mentioned, is setting up these pilot projects so that you have, in the end, real courses that are embedded in your curriculum and that are hopefully there to stay. It's not something that pops up, but they are really part of your curriculum for a long time to run. And of course, with that, everyone is always learning as we go. So the whole aspect of continuous professionalization is very important as well. That's why it's important to maybe have a service learning team that will continue to professionalize and continuously support the teachers that are teaching the real service learning courses. And then, of course, as I mentioned before already, the monitoring and evaluation, really looking, how is it going in the courses? How can we make them better? What is it that we define as a good quality service learning course? How can we evaluate that? How can we grow continuously in the process? That's also a very important dimension. Some networks, for example, in Europe, service learning is still very new, maybe 10, 15 years, that we are really defining certain courses as service learning. And so throughout time, there have been some networks that have been organized, for example, Campus Engage, that is all universities or colleges that are really looking into engagement with the outside world, and service learning is a part of that, and that's in Ireland. You have the Spanish network, you have a German-speaking network, the one with the hands, that's the Flemish network in Belgium. But you also have the European Association of Service Learning in Higher Education, the EASLHE network. What they do is they also look into policy making on a European level. They write some white papers, they do some researches, really to show to the governments also why service learning is so important. They also gather at the European Observatory, they gather good practices from all over Europe. They have a repository with resources on research that has been done on service learning. So if you're interested and you're looking for more, you can definitely explore these networks, these European networks. Next slide, please. But all over the world, service learning has been popping up. It's pretty new in Europe, but for example, CLICE, what you see, that's the Latin American Center of Service Learning. They celebrated their 20th anniversary last year. That's the organization, but of service learning there knows it's a long tradition. More than 50 years, they have been experimenting with service learning. So it's really interesting for us also today to learn from their experience and learn from that. Engagement Australia is also very active. So if you're looking for examples, explore that. There is the one in South Africa. After the apartheid, the government mentioned how important it was to be engaged in society. They really saw it as a way to overcome the injustices and the traumas from the past. So there are a lot of interesting examples to be found as well. Campus Compact is from the United States, also a very long tradition and a lot of resources to be found there. And then there is the International Association for Research on Service Learning and Community Engagement. These are really research papers. So that also they have a lot of activities online. So if you want to know more, you can explore that as well. And then the next slides. In Europe, there have been some universities that have made a partnership under the Erasmus Plus program. It's called a consortium, and they have worked around a topic related to service learning. And so these are just some examples that you can explore, and I'm sure you can, the slides will be posted somewhere, so you can click on the links. For example, the first one, it dates from a few years ago. This is mainly Central European universities that work together in a consortium. They have a manual on how to train professionals. It does train the trainer in service learning, for example. There's the TEFSE and the CHEFSE project. The CHEFSE is the follow-up of the TEFSE, and this is the CHEFSE is in the final process on community engagement in higher education. They have a whole toolbox to explore higher education and engagement. So definitely worthwhile. The nexus maybe in the with regards to migrants, that's interesting. They look into how service learning courses might be very helpful for migrant students. And when we work with migrants in the local context and, you know, how that can help them to integrate into the local context. So they have a whole manual on that. The Unicorn, that's a program that was presented in Bologna in June, and that's where Pascal and I met. So that's on the international aspect of service learning. So maybe if you want to, you have, for example, foreign students coming, then how do you engage all these international students in a service learning program, and what is the enriching part that you can take there? The Slide project, that is still running, and that's a project on service learning, inclusion, and digital empowerment. They already have some resources that they are publishing on their website as well. I mean, they have 2 more years to go. There will be more to be published. And maybe on a final note to say, there will be a European conference on the 27th and the 28th of September in Rome. The Slide project will present some of their resources already. There is a call be launched. You can find it on the website for all people who want to share on their service learning experiences. And so if you're interested, that's definitely the place to be to meet these people. So you can register and find more information on the website. This is the EASLHE website, where you can find more information on that as well. And then the final words. make the jump and go for it. Service learning, it is something new. It is often pioneering. It is often uncomfortable when you're in the jungle and you have to find your way around it. But just to say, it is definitely worthwhile. It's a great experience for students and for the teachers. It's a great experience for the partners that you are working with as well. And so sometimes it might be very interesting to just jump into another bowl and explore what to be found there. So just as a final encouragement, and I leave it there. Back to you, Pascal.
Thank you very much, Katja. So I think you've given us a lot of content to reflect on, like the theory of service learning. We're gonna take a very short 5-minute break so Katja can get a little drink after talking so much. And then we will hear about the actual case study, the access to low bus, and Pierre will be telling us more about that. But yeah, we will be back in 5 minutes. All right, and we are back. So next, I would like to welcome Pierre Coulot, who is going to talk to us about le bus de l'accès au droit, so the access to low bus, which is an example that takes place in France.
Thank you, Pascal. First of all, I would like to express my warm thanks to you, Pascal, and also to Alex and Julie for this kind invitation. My name is Pierre Coulot. I'm a PhD student in law and also a coordinator of le bus de l'accès au droit, or the access to law bus, and lecturer at the University Catholic of Lille in right of fundamental freedoms and foreigners' rights. Then I must confess, that is the first time that I'm presenting the bus in English. So I apologize in advance for my English, which can be approximate sometimes, and I count on your understanding. So I hope I will make myself very clear, and also I add a few things from your presentation, Katja, so it can be sometimes disorganized, and I'm sorry for that. My presentation will be quite brief, and I will last about 15 minutes to leave some space for questions. Feel free to ask me if there are any points you would like me to develop. So the aim of this presentation is to focus on the pedagogical aspects of participating in legal clinics within the access to law bus for students in law. Pascal, please. Beyond the obvious humanitarian aspects, it allows students to deal with real problems instead of dehumanized case studies that we can see in our law studies, which leads to, of course, a better understanding and of legal knowledge learned in class, and also developing soft skills. But I will speak about this later. Please, next slide. This is the plan of the presentation. First, I will talk briefly about the origins and the values of the project, how the program works nowadays. As Katja said, we had a pilot project, and the second project about asylum rights, the program's role to foster new pedagogies. So this is where I'm gonna make some links with catch representation, and its direct application of service learning. First of all, let's talk about money, because it costs money, obviously. And I think it's quite important to mention that. So the project is funded by a private donation. So money is not really a problem for us. As you can imagine, a bus costs quite a lot of money. Initially, the project was funded for 3 years, and now it has been reconducted for a year now. We do have a real travel bus that has been fitted out so that we have cabins to receive people in complete confidentiality. And the aim is to give free legal advice for those who are in need, and especially people in what we call legal deserts. I guess you got that. And we do have a partnership between the Lille Bar Council and the Faculty of Law of the University Catholic of Lille. Please, next slide. Thank you. And the second intention was a pedagogical project. Students are in this pilot project just observers, and they don't really take part in the consultation itself, because it's open to all students from the first year to the last. The aim is to go to cities around Lille, and the consultations are leading by professional. Obviously, there are benefits, even if they are just observers. So like knowing how to be during legal consultation. And also, I like to say that it can confirm, especially for students who are in their first years of studying, it can confirm if law studies are in line with their ideas of it. Obviously, develop also a network with lawyers, which can be very useful in this area. And volunteers and social workers. Please, next step. Okay, so in a practical way, we go in the city, we park for 3-4 hours, and we let people come in the bus with their own problems. So we don't have any, how can I say, any control on what kind of problem we can meet. And that's why it is really interesting for students. It can go from housing problems, family problems, or working matters and stuff. Next, please. So this is the cities we go, 18 cities concerned. We already helped more than 3,000 people, and 300 students having already participated. Next, please. Okay. This is why I'm here. Asylum rights. It's now the second year that we are supervising this course. And it's really, really different from the pilot project because of many, many aspects. First, it's only for Master 2. So it's Master 2. I don't know if you got the same, but it's their 5 years of studying law. It's a specific promotion in humanitarian law, security and development. We opened this course for just 10 people, 10 students, because of practical aspects. And we don't have the same partnerships as the first pilot project. We have partnership with humanitarian associations such as la CIMAD and le Secours Catholique, which are focusing on helping refugees on site in Calais. And it's a course in itself. It's part of their curriculum. That's why it's also a real service learning course. And students are not just observers. They are actors. They are legal actors. And this is not only a hint of their future career, of the real world, as Katja said, because going to Calais is facing a very particular context with a particular vulnerable population, with different culture, and also this population has a different administration. So my point is the need is real. There is no doubt of that. Regarding the actual work of our students, we go to a place where migrants can eat, can rest, can sleep, can have access to internet, they can recharge their phone and stuff. And we have a closing place where we receive these people. So on a fairly regular basis, students are required to follow up on their legal issues. They do have to work from home, do additional research, and see people again the next time if it needs. So it requires a real ongoing and emotional commitment that we learn to manage in addition to their other courses, of course. Maybe you can go to the next slides. Yes. Okay. This is the practical way for them. Now I'm going to talk about the moments of reflection, what Katja said, when the magic happens. We have in this course 3 moments dedicated to those moments. One before the first participation of the consultation, and we try to go. As Katja said, it's very uncomfortable for them and for us. So we try to make them in confidence, and they can speak very freely with us. And for that, we started by showing our own fears, our own concerns, such as being too emotive, because facing this kind of situation is really, really hard. Being surrounded by so many people that we don't know, security concerns can emerge and stuff like that. But what is funny to see is students are more concerned about the legal aspects and their own capacity to give to provide the right advice, and also the language barrier. but luckily we have translator with us. And also we do have students who speak Arabic, but all of our students are English speakers, which is really handy. After the first few participations, these fears turn out to be true or false, and this is unique to each student, and we can see that in the second moment of reflection, which happens in the middle of the experience. And what stands out the most from the students is the feeling of uselessness. Because the situation of these people in Calais is very sad. In 95% of the case, there are no solution for them. So for the students, in the first place, they could imagine that they will be really helpful for them, and it's a big deception. It's a big deception for them to face that. So we try to reassure them that they are only here to give the right disappointment. Thank you very much. They are only here to give them the right information, and that they are not responsible for the humanitarian damage that the French and the European legal system produces. We do emphasize this point. Students are sometimes crying. It's really particular for a teacher to face that. Honestly, we don't always know how to react, how to handle this. But this is what is also very beautiful in this kind of project, because it's a sharing of emotions, sharing of experience also, because when I was a student, I was a volunteer in La CIMAD, so I could go to Calais before that, and yes, we try to reassure them that they are not responsible, and that they are doing their best. There is no doubt of that too. And there is one last moment of reflection at the very end of the experience, which is more a sort of celebration with volunteers. Usually, Katia, maybe you can specify later, but usually this moment of celebration must be with the helped people, but regarding this this context, we just can't, because there is there are a lot of way and back, and people don't really stay much long in Calais. But links have been created with volunteers, and at the end of the day, students are more grateful, more than grateful, and they have been able to see themselves grow, and they let you know how they feel more confident in many ways. And some of them have found their voice through this course, and they want to have a career in this field. I went way too brief in some points, but I'm sure that question can allow me to precise some points. I'm going to conclude now by a really new project that I have, still part of this big project, but I asked my students to write a scientific article on their experience as students, but also as lawyers, and on the application of law in Calais, which is a sort of sub-law, because it depends on which person of the administration you will meet, the answer won't be the same. So my conclusion is you can wait, I do have article open next to me. Get something out of this experience in many ways, not only from the experience itself. And I guess this article is showing this point quite well. This is over for me. Thank you for your attention, and sorry for my bad English.
Thank you so much, Pierre. I think you've done brilliantly. I mean, today, Pierre not only is introducing this case study for the first time in English, but also he's sick. So I think you will all agree it's been absolutely fabulous and really given us a feel for, you know, the whole process in real life. And I think it was very powerful. So thank you, Pierre, for being so honest and open about this. All right, so now is the time for questions. So if you do have any questions or comments, please feel free to pop them in the chat box. So we'll give you a few minutes to have a think, because as I mentioned before, it is a lot of content, a lot of information to digest and reflect on. So it may be possible, it may be that questions come later. But yeah, we'll just give you a couple of minutes to pop anything that comes to mind in the chat box.
So, I mean, I've got a question to kick things off, if that's okay. So it's a question for Katia, really, because you mentioned that service learning has been something that's been used in Latin America for the past 50 years or so. And I think that was around the time that Paulo Freire was writing about critical pedagogy as well. I just wonder what the link is between these two concepts.
It is fully based on his pedagogy. So the principles of them, the empowerment that they want to do, the working together with the community, it really stems from this tradition of Paulo Freire. So that's why it's so interesting for us to see how they make use of these principles. But then the challenge also is how to apply them in a European context, because our context is so different. When we look at the examples, for example, in Latin America, also it's very much going into communities that are, you know, deprived of so many things. And what we see is when we go out to communities, they're right there, and we have so many social security systems and so much to offer in our systems that for us sometimes it's so much harder to identify where are the cracks in the system. You know, it's not always so obvious, but they are there. And so to apply or to figure out what the principles are that they are using in a different context, and then looking in our own context and identify where are these cracks, where are these injustices, where are the things that are lacking for people to really be not oppressed, and to speak in the language of Paulo Freire, that asks a lot of reflection in that. And so that's a tension also that we sometimes see, that we cannot just copy paste their ideas. And so we are in the process of figuring out also what does it mean to apply these principles in our own context. But yes, very much stemming from Paulo Freire's book, the Pedagogy of the Oppressed, very relevant.
Thank you, Katia. So at the moment, we just have some comments, no questions. Really interesting and insightful. Thank you so much for sharing. And another comment from Joe. It sounds like this is really an effective way for the students to understand the human impact. Oops, my chat is moving. The human impact of theory and the law, and prepare themselves for the reality of working in the profession. Yes, absolutely. Actually, I do have one question for you, Katia, as well. Obviously, in this presentation, we've mentioned a couple of case studies where law students are involved, but I think it can be applied to any subject or any fields. Would you be able to give us maybe a couple of other examples of different subjects where you have applied service learning at Leuven?
Yes, there are. I mean, service learning, you can apply it actually in any discipline, and if you can make it interdisciplinary, that makes it even more challenging, but also more interesting. There is service learning in law, as Pierre has already given us a very great example. There's another one. It's closely related to law, but for example, students from criminology, theology, and law, they go to the prison. And they will follow a course on it's called the lived experience of imprisonment. So they study with incarcerated people, and both groups of students from the KU Leuven and students from the prison, they are students in the course, and together they read texts and they go into punishment and justice, and they just explore these topics. So that is one. It's related to law, but that's one. We have, for example, this is in one of the art schools, just to say that there's, it can go everywhere, where we have students that are going to a home for well, they call them guests, but these are minor students that cannot go home because of, a very bad home situation. So they live there, they go to school and they live there. And they looked into how their the living room, the communal space is not so cozy, and often they're very traumatized by things that they have experienced. So they go and look into how can we make it more homey, and so it's very much interior design, looking into what are, for example, colors or what to do with lighting, just to, to create a calm space, what materials to use, for them to really feel at home, and how can that be of help for them in their own process. So just to say, these are two totally different examples. There are sometimes, for example, in Chinese studies, they can go to work with, well, they weren't able to go to China because of the COVID situation, but for example, they go to a local trailer park where they work with children. They work together with an organization that is involved there, and then they work with them to organize activities with the children, and then they have to reflect on intercultural competences and how to engage with them. And so, I mean, just a few to give some examples. We find that with the social or the human studies, the bridge is sometimes easier because, there is already a social dimension to what it is that you're studying. The difficulty there often is how to make a distinction between what could be an internship, a social internship, but then really seek out this extra dimension to really make it service learning and to have this extra learning that you cannot have in a normal internship. When we go more into the hard sciences, that, because there is not really a social aspect often to it. So we need more imagination to see, like, how can we do that? There are examples. A lot of people are experimenting with it. You can go to our website. We have all our courses listed on the KU Leuven Service Learning webpage. There are, as I mentioned, on the European webpage, there are some, the European Association webpage, there are a lot of activities to be explored there as well. But just to say, there is no excuse for any discipline. Everyone can come up with something. Yeah.
Thanks very much, Katia. So we have another question that's come up in the chat, and I think this one is relevant to either to Katia or to Pierre, or maybe both. So the question is, do you perhaps have a toolkit for students entering these communities to undertake those horizontal dialogues? Tips about how to engage with them at the levels, at their levels or the same level, finding common ground, connecting through shared experience.
Pierre, do you want to?
Maybe the theory before the practice.
Well, yeah, at KU Leuven, we have been, experimenting for some years now. So we have developed a toolkit. It's in our online modules to help them prepare a little bit. Well, we have a toolkit for the teachers and for the students, but specifically for the students, then it's a little bit on, inclusion, positionality, knowing how to engage. There is also a module on what is service learning, because also for the students, it's new. So they have to understand what are the underlying principles. There is, there are different modules, reflection, because that's also difficult. It's also new to students. So, there are some examples that we give or explain why reflection is important in service learning. So we have that. But, as I said, we also professionalize as we go. So we learn as we go. And so, especially when it comes to these principles of solidarity and this dialogue, this is not like a one clear-cut thing. That's why you also have these networks to explore together with teachers. How does it work? And in the sharing of these experience, you can, apply them in your next service learning course. So it really works in cycles. So, there are modules that we have created, that you can create, that anyone can create, or you can use from one another. And at the same time, I just want to emphasize that this is an ongoing process, a learning process. This is not like I make my course and that's it. You learn as you go, and you apply what you learn as you go. So just to make that clear, the two aspects. But then Pierre?
Yes, my main toolkit is you, Katia, because as I mentioned, it's only the second year that I'm supervising this course. The first year was, as I like to say, a crash test. And we were really honest with the students. And we also make them participate to any decision. So we make sure that they have one voice in the making process. So we don't have a toolkit for the teachers or for the students, but the moments of reflection are really important. Especially the first one, because we can start by deconstruct some fears that are not really relevant, or not relevant, that's not a proper word, but which can be deconstructed really fast. But we just have to jump into it, especially in our project. So the contact with the people, we try to facilitate this contact with the people by always be with the students in the first place. We don't let them out in the Secours Catholique on their own. And we can see their progress through the participations, And at the end, we arrive at Calais, and we just watch them doing their job, which is really, really satisfying for the teachers. So this is an ongoing work and process.
Okay, thanks very much, Pierre and Katia. Okay, so we have another question that's come in. So is there any mental health support available for both students and staff involved in service learning, particularly when dealing with vulnerable people like refugees who've experienced a lot of traumatic experiences?
This is a really, really good question. We don't. And that can be a very complicated part. So far, I don't have any issue with that. As I said, we faced 1 month ago a student crying, but no, we just don't. Do we need it? I don't know. Will it be relevant? Will it be good for the course itself? I don't really have an answer to that.
Yeah, at KU Leuven, we're also not really offering psychological or help in the courses, I'm also personally not aware of one situation where that was really needed in the moment. What we do is, of course, we work in our team. There is someone from student affairs. And so, to really make the connection for the well-being of the students so that, if needed, we can, call upon the office, because, of course, any university has some psychological services or mental health being, but it is a good question. And I think, as we've mentioned also, it is a process also for teachers. And I think what Pierre says, it's really so honest of showing also your vulnerability as a teacher. You go also into places that you do not control. You cannot protect your students for what is happening. It is real life, and real life is messy and complex, and it can awaken many emotions that you don't always know how to control. And I think for teachers also how to deal with it. Of course, they design their reflection, to guide the learning process of the students. But yeah, it's definitely something that we can focus on more, how as a teacher take care of the mental well-being of your students. What would that look like? Yes, that's something where we also are not yet, but it's good to point that out, and it's definitely something to take with us and see how we can grow in that area as well. Thank you for the question.
Yeah, thank you. And also, I guess, from what you were saying, like reflection is a key part of service learning, the whole process. So I guess through that process of reflection, students have a way inbuilt into the process of thinking about their experiences, of processing emotions and things like that. So I suppose that's already part of it to some extent, but there's just not the kind of the external mental health support. Okay, thank you very much. So are there any other questions at all? I think nothing else has come through in the chat.
I see in the chat, sorry, Alex, that someone asked to share the resources. I think this is about the toolkit, if I'm correct. Is that the resources that we have at KU Leuven? I will maybe, Pascal, I will send you some links. We are still also developing, and of course most of it's in Dutch. So we are developing some things in English, and then I will I give the links so that we can add it to the presentation. But as I mentioned, we're also still developing. So as we go, we will develop more and more will be found on our website. But next to that, there's also the European Association, as I mentioned. So there's a lot to be found. And like I said, the links to the Erasmus Plus, there is a lot there as well. I hope that helps. Yeah. And Google is a good translator. So yes, that will definitely help.
All right. Any more questions or comments? If not, we will probably close the session. So I'll give it another minute. Last chance.
I mean, if I can just say, so Katja, you used a really useful image of the fish, and I hadn't heard that before. Like the third thing that you said about, well, what do you do if the river itself is being polluted? Kind of showing that the system itself might be broken, and that for me seemed to resonate a lot with what Pierre was saying about, you know, in Calais, you know, the students, they can try to make a difference, and they can in some cases, but then the reality is that the system itself won't allow, you know, every case to have a happy ending type of thing. And yeah, I think that was I think it's really interesting thinking about it in that way, like the extent to which we work within the system to help communities, and then the extent to which we might need to challenge the system and try to change the system, like what you were saying, Katja, about Paulo Freire and that aspect of it. So yeah, I guess that, would you say that is a sort of tension within service learning about the extent to which you work within and or try to challenge a system?
I think, because this is of course very difficult, you know, you are there with students, you maybe have a certain amount of hours that you can, you know, be engaged with the community, and, you know, you have to evaluate and give credits, and, you know, you're not going to change the system in one course, you know. And like Pierre was saying, you know, it can be very overwhelming for students to realize, you know, that they, you know, they may be coming with, you know, an unconscious idea of being a hero to someone, you know, legal advice, and, you know, that person is helped, and then, you know, it's very joyous, and then, you know, just really bumping into a system that, you know, it's so, you know, stuck, and there is not a lot that you can do within a system that is broken. So that is a tension. And so the question is also, how do you guide them through, and that's why reflection is so important, and the discussion and the dialogue that you have with the people on the ground, the partners, but also in a safer space in the classroom. What do you make of this tension? How do you not feel so overwhelmed after such an experience that you're paralyzed? But how do you acknowledge that there are cracks in the system, and then imagining, like the UNESCO report says, like, how can you reimagine the future? How can you reimagine yourself as a professional to not just, you know, become one part in the system and maintain the system, but what is it that you, with your limited resources and time, and, you know, the ambitions that you have, what can you do to maybe, you know, change the system a little bit? And I think that is really powerful in the service learning, that you can withdraw yourself from the system. You become a subject. You're not just stuck in the system, and you know, that is a tension. That's not something yet that you just do overnight, and that is also a challenge for the teacher. How do you call forth the students, you know, outside of this, you know, and give them agency and show them that they can do something, you know, not in an ideological way, like, you know, you're going to save the world, but more like realistically, what is it that you can do? What do you identify? What does it do to you, you know? And then how does it drive you to action. I think that is the very powerful thing that service learning can offer. It is something that as a teacher you can invite your students to, but you cannot enforce that on them. It's their learning process. So it is tension, it is uncomfortable. But I think, yeah, that's where it gets so exciting, you know, to see how students respond to that and start reimagining something and themselves in the whole. It's not a clear-cut answer, Alex, I'm sorry, but it's just, you know, to get you a little bit of a feel of, you know, what it could be or what the tension could lead to. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Katia. Yeah, I know it's very complicated. So yeah, we had a comment come through in the chat that kind of addressing that point as well, from Colleen saying highlight broken systems through sharing the information widely with the public to not only make more people in the wider public aware of the broken system, but credible things they might do to help fix this with you, as we can't do it alone. For example, signing petitions, volunteering time or energy, getting PR outlets involved in service learning where possible, with consideration to data protection and confidentiality. So I suppose, yeah, so turning it around into something positive, into something tangible that people can do.
And with that, try to see how you can engage the people you're trying to advocate for, so that maybe in the process, they can be their own advocates. You know, that's very Paulo Freire, you know, they have to very much be engaged in their own process. And I think through service learning and, you know, all these activities that Colleen is mentioning, these are things that you can do with your students, but it's so much more rich. It's richer if you can do it with the community and teach them along how they can do these things themselves, that they can become their own advocates, you know. And there is no one clear-cut answer in how you can do that. I think it's just, you know, like I mentioned before, just make the jump and go for it and see where you get and how it, you know, unpacks, unfolds, and then go from there.
Thanks very much. And yeah, I think because I think there no more questions have come through into the chat, so I think that might be a good time to start wrapping up. But yeah, I just wanted to say thank you so much for coming along today and talking to us about this concept, which hasn't really taken a hold yet in the UK, but maybe this will be the kind of trigger. Maybe maybe this will encourage kind of more higher education institutions in the UK to make that leap. So yeah, it's been incredibly inspiring, and definitely it's inspired me to go and find out more about it. So thank you so much.
You're very welcome, and the pleasure was all mine, and I'm sure Pierre.
Yes, thank you very much.
And also thank you very much to everyone for coming along today. And I think Pascal will just say a few final words about what's going to happen next with recordings and things.
Thank you. So yes, this was the closing event of Breaking Barriers Refugee Week 2023. And well, I feel it was a magnificent way to close the week with a topic that's very inspirational, and hopefully, as Alex said, it will trigger a reaction among British higher education institutions, and service learning will start appearing here and there, and we can try to help shape the future and make our students citizens of change. So we will be uploading all the videos from this week's in the next week or so, and as soon as they're available, we will email all participants. We will also send the link to a feedback questionnaire. We would be very grateful if you can complete it to help us inform future Breaking Barriers Refugee Week and measure the impact of those sessions. But thank you very much again to all our speakers and to everyone who made the time to attend. And we hope to see you again next year. Thank you and have a lovely weekend.